Hello, everyone. Welcome. It's me, Jackson. Also, I have Jonathan Tweet on today, and we're going to talk about his work and his life and things like that. Lots of stuff and things today, and that's going to be exciting. So, I'm going to hand it off to him so he can tell us a little bit about his background, and then we'll get into his work.
Yeah, you bet. I've been doing professional tabletop game design for over 30 years now, ever since I got out of college. I've always been really interested in science, and especially biology and paleontology and evolution. But in college, I switched from biology to psychology and sociology, and I ended up being a tabletop game designer instead of a biologist. So I've worked on tabletop card games like Magic and Pokemon, and role-playing games like Dungeons and Dragons, and several of my own role-playing game designs. And I'm still doing that with some of the same people I've been working with for 30 years, and obviously lots of new people. And now I've started to do evolution communication for kids, and it's sort of a new gig for me, and it runs parallel to my game design work.
Okay, I also role play from time to time, but that's a topic for another show.
Yeah.
That is really neat that you do all that kind of stuff.
I think it turned out really well for helping me explain evolution to kids, because as a game designer, I need to engage people's imaginations, and I need to be able to make complicated rules seem simple, and need to get people to be engaged with new ideas, and in some sense, in Grandmother Fish, the kids sort of role play being a fish or an ape or whatever. So it's kind of like a role playing game.
Right. Yeah, because you make it has the little animal noises in each chapter. It's like, oh, they do this, plus this, plus this, and I really love that how you worked all of that in. I think that that's fantastic, because that really solidifies the concept of a clade.
Yes.
Plus this.
Yeah.
This or
this. Yeah,
this.
that's right. And in fact, like I said, I studied biology in college, but I didn't know what a clade was until I started doing research for my evolution book. And then, so Grandmother Fish is the kids' book about evolution that I did, the first book to teach evolution to preschoolers. It taught me what a clade was, and so now I went and made a game called Clades, so that kids can use the clade concept in the animal matching game. There's a prehistoric version of it too, with all prehistoric animals. So that came out last year. And then the latest thing that I've got going in terms of communication for kids, science communication for kids, is an app that just released on Darwin's birthday.
Whoa.
So that's the 12th. So it's you can get it on iOS and Kindle Fire and Android, and it's a game that teaches sort of kids how to sort animals, and one of the ways that you sort them is by what clades they're in. So yeah, it's been an interesting change of events. It was 2013 that I finally figured out sort of how to make the Grandmother Fish book work, and then since then I've been doing more of this evolution communication work. I'm even consulting with the Science Museum of Minnesota. They have a new evolution project in the works, and they've gotten a dozen sort of experts from around the country to convene there and help them out. P.Z. Myers is one of them. I know you've had him on the show before. So that's been a lot of fun. There was a fellow doing a kid's book on how the bombardier beetle evolved its chemical weapons, and so consulted with him on that. It seems like there's a growing field of getting science to kids, and especially evolutionary science, and it's exciting to be part of that.
Oh, definitely. Have you heard of Mario Mouton? Mario Mouton?
Maybe.
Or MJ Mouton is also a name. He also goes by that.
Who's that?
He also he's kind of like you. He does the books teaching science and the works of different sciences to kids, like Charlie and the Tortoise.
Okay. Yeah. So I think I've seen some of that. I think I've seen that book. Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. It is really important to get kids to kind of learn about this, because I know for a lot of people it's something. Evolution wasn't a concept I was introduced to in elementary school. It wasn't until middle school, and I had to do most of the research on my own. Before they really kind of dip you into it in high school, right?
Yeah.
And
Oh, I remember in college still not having a really good grasp of how things evolved from, um, from earlier eras to today. Um, there's a real temptation to look at things as like a ladder or right.
right.
So where like all these animals are on at the same track and they're just at different points of the track. And the idea that evolution spreads in all directions at once is sort of not intuitive to people. It was not intuitive to me. So I really feel like I want kids to go to kindergarten having a better understanding of evolution than I had in college. And
Oh
some
yeah.
in terms of just having an intuitive sense for how it all worked and how we're all related.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I agree. It evolution is in and of itself, difficult to grasp.
That's
The
right.
idea that that it's not all about us. It's not ladder like you said. It's not a progression.
That's right.
And so I don't remember who said it a long time ago. I heard it, but as long as you can get like three concepts in their head, in kids' head, as like when they're young, and it's like reproduction, variation, and then like I think there's a form of natural selection, something like that. As long as you can get the basics of these three in their heads at a young age, or I think it was time, maybe something like that. But
right. So there's an acronym called VISTA, VISTA, and the Science Museum in Minnesota is making a big use of that. So it's variation within the population. It's inheritance. You inherit some variation from your parents, right? It's selection. It can be natural selection. It can be breeding, artificial selection. And then time, like you said, takes some amount of time for things to happen. And the result of that is adaptation. So VISTA is the acronym that we're working with, right?
I like
And
that.
it's just like what you say, just get those basic concepts in. Yeah.
Yeah. You have to start. You have to start there, otherwise you end up with Ken Hams all over the place.
Exactly. One of the experts that's consulting with us, she said that in her studies, like she studies how well evolution exhibits get their ideas across to people. So obviously very useful for what we're doing. And she said, you can teach kids common descent, and you can teach kids natural selection, but it's really hard to teach both of those things at the same time. Like they're obviously related.
Right.
And so what I did in Grandmother Fish is it's just common descent. It just shows the kids how we and the other animals like us are descended from the first jawed fish, from the first animals that could live on land and lay eggs on land, from the first mammals and so forth. And then there's notes in the back for if you're a parent and you want to explain natural selection to your kid. There's notes on how to do that and how to bring the topic down to their level. But it's hard to do both of those things at the same time, natural selection and common descent.
Oh, I agree. I think the same exact problem applies to trying to make phylogenies on a time scale. Because if you're trying to do living critters, like I've got this one in the background, so you can see the phylogeny, and it's got dates on it, but you don't get a sense of the scale. It might, like one node might say 450, the next one says 320. It's like there's no scale there.
Yeah. Yeah. So for scale, so when I read Grandmother Fish to kids, right? So it starts out with Grandmother Fish, and so this is our Grandmother Fish, and she lived a long, 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 long time ago. Right? So when I do projects with kids, I try to get across to them how long ago that fish lived, where it was 400 million years ago. Well, how do you get that across to kids? So these fish are literally our great-grandparents. Like they are literally our ancestors. And it's about 200 million generations, Richard Dawkins estimates, 200 generations back to those ancestors.
The Ancestor's Tale?
The Ancestor's Tale.
Oh,
Yeah,
that's one of my favorite books of all time. Oh my God.
I totally leaned on that book a lot in creating Grandmother Fish. Absolutely. Yeah, great book. Well, if you wanted to say great grandmother Fish with all the greats, great, right? It would take you 3 years to say her whole name out loud.
Right.
And that's a way to get across to kids the scale that we're talking about. Like how long ago did that grandmother live? Well, 3 years worth of greats back to that grandmother. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I'm so glad you used that book. I've seen some websites. There was one I came across called Evo Genio that kind of does the same thing. It's like 20. This is our 25th great. You know.
Yeah. Right. And if you want, you can calculate like this is our 200 millionth cousin 100 million times removed or something like that. Like you can do all sorts of weird calculations for how horses relate to us, right?
Right.
Like they're cousins, but all the animals are our cousins. So how close a cousin are they, right? Yeah, it's a really interesting exercise.
Oh yeah, definitely. That's great. That makes it even greater in my mind knowing that you took, or that because I have your book. I have Grandmother Fish. It's wonderful, and that it's also based on one of my favorite books. That makes it so much cooler, I think.
I mean, so for me, that was one of the things that was very satisfying about working on a science book for children is that it's not my story and I'm not making it up. So I can go to grown-up books like Ancestor's Tale by Richard Dawkins and mine information out of it. And other people can see their own parts of the story in it, whether it's a paleontologist who really likes the kind of fish that we used as a model, or yesterday I read I read the book to a class over the internet. My sister's a grade school teacher, and they had just been working on dinosaurs, and they're about to start on animals. And so I was able to show them where dinosaurs fit in the whole scheme of things, right? And so the way the book works is you've got Grandmother Fish, and you prompt the child, like you were saying, the sounds and motions, right? So you say, Grandmother Fish could wiggle and swim fast. Can you wiggle? And then kids, of course, like to wiggle. And that's the first language of children is mimicry. And so I didn't realize it until the book was really published and parents were reading it to their kids, just how engaging it is, how kids glom onto it because it's about animals and families, and they love all that stuff and motions and actions, and it really works out, right? So there's Grandmother Fish, and then there's Grandmother Reptile, who can she could crawl and breathe, and so the kids crawl and breathe. And then here's where the dinosaurs come in. There's sort of a little evolutionary tree in miniature, right, where you can see that the grandchildren of Grandmother Reptile, where there were all sorts of different grandchildren that could wiggle and chomp like Grandmother Fish and crawl and breathe like Grandmother Reptile. And then this is where the dinosaurs come in. And then there's a big book in the back, a big 2-page spread in the back of the book that's an evolutionary family tree. And my artist Karen Lewis kind of made me put that in there. I said it was going to be a lot of work, and she said kids would love it. And we were both right. It was a lot of work, but kids do love it. And again, you've got the whole sort of Grandmother Reptile here. You can see the whole sauropsid line right here of birds and reptiles, dinosaurs, all that kind of stuff. So what's neat about it is because it's a true story, and it's everybody's story, different people, kids of different ages, scientists from different fields, they can all sort of see their part in it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I do also. I really love that that picture in the back. I think that's really great. So it appeals to me as well. It's not just kids.
Yeah. That tree,
the whole family.
Yeah. So I've actually used it like now when I need to look up how animals are related to each other. Sometimes I'll look on here. It's like, okay, well, okay, when did horses split off? Like, how are they related to? And it's like, well, I already did all that work, and I put it into this for kids and made it all easy. So one of the things that Karen Lewis is the artist. One of the things that we want to do is at some point do a poster that sort of blows this up and makes it bigger. And we've got a whole bunch of new animal images now from Clades Prehistoric and the Clades game, and so those could all get added in. And we think that would be a good addition. And boy, kids really love that. They love that animal family tree because it's all about, you know, categorizing and compartmentalizing and who's related to who. And, you know, kids love those details. And I like it if the kids are learning something that's real instead of like which Pokemon turns into which Pokemon and that sort of stuff.
Right. Yeah, I agree. It is, you know, the greatest show on earth.
Yeah,
to quote Richard Dawkins. So
that's brilliant. Yeah, that's right.
So yeah, it does include all of us, and putting all that into something that's easy, because you know, someone who has to read technical literature and make videos about it for my channel, it is difficult a lot of times to, you know, synthesize these really big concepts, synthesizing concepts of common ancestry and adaptation and all this. And so it is extremely valuable that we have people doing this for younger audiences.
Yeah. So when I was working on Grandmother Fish, I went to a couple bookstores. I wanted to check out the preschool science section so I could see, well, what are the other preschool science books like? How do they package their science, and what do their covers look like, and what do the pages look like? And it turns out that bookstores don't have preschool science sections. There aren't enough preschool science books to make a preschool science section. And that's when I realized, wow, I really do need to write this book. It's, you know, there's a bunch of great science stuff that kids could understand if we explained it to them. And but science gets sort of put off until grade school for a lot of kids.
Oh yeah. I have a comment from Greg Hartwick. Says Isaac Asimov was asked to write a book to explain how the tides work for 6-year-olds. He said it was one of the most difficult books he ever wrote.
Oh, I bet. Yeah. Yeah. Honestly, I have thought I've put some real thought into how you explain the tides. So maybe I should look that book up. I'd be pretty interested to hear how he did it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I don't know if there's a quote. I think it's been attributed to Einstein. I don't know if he came up with it, but it's like, if you can understand a concept if you can explain it to your grandmother.
Yeah, exactly. Then you have to really understand something in order to explain it. Yeah. And you know, if someone had come to me and said, write a book for kids about evolution that teaches evolution to 6-year-olds, I would not have been able to do it. It took me 15 years of noodling on it and thinking about it and revising it. And then finally it was a big flash of insight. And if I hadn't had that sort of flash of inspiration, I would still be noodling on that book. It would still just be a manuscript somewhere. So it's a real hard question. One of the publishers that we worked with, one of the publishers that we talked to when we were trying to find a home for Grandmother Fish, they said they had tried to get an author to write a young children's book about evolution, and the author came back and said they couldn't do it. They didn't know how to do it. And so wow. I think for me it worked precisely because it was a passion project. Like, I could work on it however long, and it didn't matter that it was taking me 15 years because I'm not a children's book author. No one's expecting me to write it anytime soon, and I could let it really take its time and then only finish it when I finally had the wherewithal to do it.
Right. Yeah. And that is great. The teaching that, you know, all the that there are, you get to a point and then you have a branch, and only one of these branches leads to us, but there are lots of other branches because they're all related. I think that's awesome. the increasingly inclusive Clades.
Right.
That's also awesome.
Yeah.
It really overall is a very good book. Do you have any plans for future works similar to it, or do you plan to make other things?
Yeah. Well, I mean, obviously, that's one of the things that our agent wants from us is like another book or a sequel or something. I mean, this book, Grandmother Fish, it took me 15 years, right? Like this wasn't just a book that I did because somebody wanted me to do a book, right? This was a book I did because somebody needed to write this book and I was the right person to do it. And I had the patience to just keep at it. Well, I'm not going to write another book like this anytime soon, right? It's hard to come up with something
right
comparable. It's a super hard act to follow. It's sort of kind of a once in a lifetime project. That said, yeah, well, we are working on other projects. So the same artist worked on Clades with me. So the great thing about the Clades game is that it's card after card with her images of animals on it, right? So there's the 2-meter long millipede from
Arthropleura, yeah.
pterosaurs, and I had to learn all about pterosaurs to try to pick out the right ones that would give you kids sort of like an overview of what they all are. There's lizards and snakes go together in one clade called squamates, so there they are. And it's just wonderful to just have her art on all this. And so it's just a pleasure to play the game because you just get to see, all these animals. And Karen's just a wonder at making them look like the real thing, but also approachable to a kid and kind of fun-loving. And you can see we put a child on. These are the mammals of the land, and one of the goals of the game is just to put a human being in there so that kids playing it will just naturally come to see humans as part of the overall family tree. So that was our big, our next big thing. It's not a book, but it's going to appeal to a lot of the same people. And then she and I are working on a concept for a book about mammals. Like mammals are the animals that kids love the most. And so it'll be a book to help kids see what mammals are, all the different kinds of animals that are mammals, and also sort of what smaller groups of those work, So bats are one group of mammal, right? And cetaceans are another group of mammal, right? And then the armadillos and the sloths are xenarthrans, so that's a whole other kind of mammal. And so it's sort of, again, an introduction to the idea of clades, that there are all these clades of mammals that together make the whole clade of mammals.
Oh yeah, and that's that reminds me, because one of the parts I think is difficult about teaching the phylogeny of different organisms is that a lot of the phylogenetic things that are like open access online are just living organisms.
Right.
And so when you see, humans are here, and then, like you said, rabbits are over here, and they come to a common ancestor, it's like, okay, well, we've got these different guys here, but it's like, how did we go from this point, to these different points?
What's the common ancestor? What's the common point? Yeah. That's pretty interesting. Yeah.
Especially for like you mentioned, cetaceans, because they nest within the hoof mammals. Like, what the heck?
Right? Exactly. Isn't that weird? And their closest relatives are hippos.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess I don't have it here, but our card that has a porpoise, a dolphin, and a baleen whale, a blue whale, and then a hippo. And those are the three that all go together for the water mammals.
Mm. Yeah.
And that's a fun fact that kids will like to know, that hippos and whales are closely related.
Yeah, definitely. Because that, that wasn't even figured out till like, was it the 90s, 80s, 90s, something like that. And so, because you got, the genetic data came along. We had the fossils of like, Pakicetus, Ambulocetus, and so showing this is what early whales look like. They look more like dogs and they look like whales.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and boy, the genetics has really changed everything, right? Like we've really been able
Oh yeah.
to figure out who's related to who, and
Oh yeah, definitely. I've got a really interesting paleontology book, which still goes by the like the panungulate hypothesis for like elephants,
okay,
hyraxes, even
yep,
in odd hoof mammals are all from the same. They all have the same
oh,
like common ancestor, and it's like,
yeah,
whoa, that was in the 90s.
yeah, that's pretty old, right? The hyraxes and the elephants and the manatees are off sort of on their own little path now.
Yeah.
Right? They're not part of the bigger picture. So another thing that I did. So here's a. These are the arthropods of the water in clades, and you can see these are molluscostracans. So it's a type of crustacean. So a crab and a lobster, and then there's a roly-poly or an isopod, right? So the lesson here for kids is that just because their common ancestor down here lived in the water doesn't mean they all live in the water anymore, because
Right.
evolution, goes wherever it wants to go.
Yeah. The gigantic Japanese spider crab, the one that's body is like the size of a dinner plate, is descended from like hermit crabs, or is in the
Right.
same is in that same group. It's like,
Okay,
what?
right? Yeah. Yeah.
That's pretty crazy. Or
Yeah.
how do
Yeah.
it?
Evolution is just full of those sorts of surprises, right? Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Who would have ever thought there'd be a bunch of cerebralized primates talking on technology?
I mean, we really are something else. I have friends who think that humans are not that special, but yeah, I think our ability to communicate symbolically and think logically is, yeah, obviously it's opened up whole new worlds, right? It's a whole new realm of evolution and possibility. Yeah.
Definitely. There was a chat just the other day between who stated clearly John Perry
Oh
and
yeah.
somebody else on like just Culture Evolve, something like that. It was
Okay.
pretty neat. He's also a really neat guy. I guess you've heard of him.
Yeah, John Perry. I think he's in Oregon, so not too far from me. I'm in Seattle.
Well, you are really close to my friend RJ Downard.
Oh, okay.
He's in Spokane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Also.
so I mean a bit of a drive, but
Yep.
but yeah, you guys are right up there, which is sad because I'm way down here in Louisiana.
Okay. That's far away.
Yeah, it's a bit of a drive.
Yeah. Seattle's has a nice, literate, educated populace that I feel really at home here.
Oh, you've got this is a fellow Washingtonian from Piggle in the chat, live chat.
Okay, great.
Yeah, I would think, or at least I would hope that the kind of the aversion to evolution is a lot less where you are up there than it is down here.
I think that's right.
Yeah.
Mostly what you get is, it's not teachers avoiding the topic because it's too political or sensitive. It's teachers avoiding the topic because they think it's too big a topic for little kids.
Mm.
And, what I'm trying to do is show everybody that you can broach these topics to little kids. Like little kids wonder, where we came from. Like
Right.
a friend of mine said his daughter said, "Who born to the first mother?" Like kind of where,
Right.
which is kind of a kid's way of asking where we came from, right?
Mm-hmm.
And here you go. Now, here's your answer.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So one of the things that really made me happy with Grandmother Fish, this thing that I poured my heart into for a long time and finally made work, is that it's been my way of getting some kind of recognition or some contact from my heroes. So Steve Pinker endorsed the book. Daniel Dennett endorsed it. He promoted it on Twitter. P.Z. Myers was one of the first people to promote it. David Sloan Wilson, the guy that wrote Darwin's Cathedral. He's doing a whole bunch of cool evolution projects, and he really liked it. Jonathan Haidt, he's the guy that wrote The Righteous Mind. He's got a daughter who really likes it, and you know, it sort of came around at the right time when his daughter was asking where we come from, and so that has been really heartwarming for me to, get this book in front of people. Richard Dawkins got a copy and thought it was lovely. E.O. Wilson got a copy. E.O. Wilson says all these different tribes, all these different groups of people around the world have different origin stories, and it makes it hard for people to cooperate because your origin story tells you who you are and your place in the world. And if people have different origin stories, it makes it hard for them to be on the same project. Whereas Grandmother Fish, right? Suddenly that's the origin story that everyone can adopt, right? So there's going to be a Chinese translation and a Japanese translation. It's a story that transcends any one culture. Like Darwin might have been English, but the story of evolution is everybody's story, and it's been nice for me as someone with a sort of a science fan background to be able to sort of hobnob with actual scientists. I don't know, I took one biology class or 2 or 3 in college, but I've always been really a big fan of science and especially life sciences. So, to have teachers and scientists endorse the book and say that it's a great way of reaching little kids, that has meant a lot to me personally. I've gotten a lot of credit for the games that I do, and I guess I'm kind of used to that at this point. So it's really neat to get some kudos, some respect for science communication, and science communication is so valuable. There's so much that kids can learn that it means a lot to me to be part of that effort.
Oh yes, and you deserve certainly all the recognition for it. I was in the last year of high school when I started seeing the tweets about it, and I thought, wow, this is awesome.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and so I do remember seeing that, and it wasn't until last year that I finally got it, and so now I have. Although, well, I mean, Savannah has it over at her house.
Okay.
But it's within my reaching range most of the time.
Yeah.
And we have definitely read it, so it's really good, and that's this is a valuable service, and I do hope to certainly see more projects like this in the future from anybody who teach these complex subjects.
There's definitely more science for kids on the way from me and from other people. It seems like that's seems like it's something that people want. That, like, my original plan for the book, honestly, was to do a cheap version that was digital only, that I would fund out of my own pocket. And I didn't have high hopes for it, but I just wanted it to be published. After all the years of doing it and finally figuring out how to do it right, I thought a digital publication would be the cheapest way to get the book out there and sort of have my dream come true of having this in front of other people. But when I told people about it, I would say, hey, I'm going to do this digital book about evolution, and it's for preschoolers or toddlers. Their eyes would light up. And after that happened a couple times, I thought, well, if people's eyes light up when they hear about this project, it should be a hardback book that people can buy. It should just be something that's on in digital format. And so I found an artist to do real art for it. She was a friend of a friend, and then we went on Kickstarter and raised money for it, so that we had over $30,000 to pay for a small print run. And then when that sold out, there was a blog post that went viral back in 2015 when the book was out, and blog post on an NPR blog that went viral on our book sold out, and then an agent contacted us, and that agent had 3 different major New York publishers all bidding on this book. And then we picked which one we wanted to go with. And then within Macmillan, there were several imprints that each wanted the book. And so we talked with this publisher and that publisher, and we went with Feiwel and Friends. So, it turned out way better than I ever thought it would. Like in 2013, I thought it was going to be, a cheap digital book with decent art. And by 2015, it was a fantastic hardback book with gorgeous art that was selling out.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, really great turn of events. And,
yeah,
and the artist helped me make the book better than I would have ever made it by myself. And I got tons of help from friends to improve it. Everything from advice on typography and advice on, wording and all these sorts of things that really helped me make the book really sing. So when Feiwel and Friends picked it up for Macmillan, they reviewed it and they said they were not going to ask for a single word to be changed. Like usually if they get a manuscript from someone who's never written a children's book before, something needs to be edited or changed or tweaked or shortened or simplified or whatever. But this manuscript had really gone through the ringer already. Because I was doing it on Kickstarter, it's like, hey, I want to do this cool book on Kickstarter. Other people want to pitch in and help and make that happen. And so they volunteered all sorts of advice and help. And I could just point to point after point where the book's different from how I originally intended it because of all this feedback and better now.
Mm-hmm. And it ended up being a fantastic book.
Fantastic book, yeah. School Library Journal likes it. They call it groundbreaking and highly recommended. It got reviewed in the American Biology Teacher in their journal. So there was a blogger who has 2 sons with autism, and they like the book. They're not as verbal as most kids their age, but the book lets you interact, like you hoot like an ape, right? Or you wiggle like a fish and crawl like a lizard and squeak like a mammal. And so little kids who are pre-verbal can get in on that, and kids with verbal delays can get involved. So it seems to invite kids to try reading. It has a very structured format, which I think you mentioned already, and I think turned out to be a really, really good part. So the way the book works is grandmother fish can wiggle and chomp, and reptile can crawl and breathe, and mammal can squeak and cuddle, and ape can grab and hoot, and humans can walk and talk. And by the end, you get, all these grandchildren that can wiggle and chomp and crawl and breathe and squeak and cuddle and grab and hoot and walk and talk. And because these words are all repeated over and over again, and because the kids did motions for all those words, it helps them remember them really easily. So when they get to, like a phrase partway through, and it says she could grab and climb branches, grab branches to climb. Well, grab is in big, bold letters, and it's the one special word here, and the child has done the motion to help her remember. And so it's really easy for a beginning reader to come back through here and follow that repetition and learn those special fun words like cuddle and hoot. Yeah. So it turned out to be way more engaging for kids than I thought it would. I knew parents would like it, but until it was really published, I didn't realize just how much kids would glom onto it, even little kids.
Oh yeah, definitely. I kind of that exhausts all the questions that I have. So, okay. Do you have any other points that you want to throw out there about how it's made?
Yeah, I guess the one thing I would like to say, I want to speculate a little bit about why people's eyes would light up when I told them I was doing a book about evolution for kids, right? Mm-hmm. So it's hard for modern secular people to really sort of affirm any one narrative, right? We all know that all our narratives are partial and all our political beliefs are partly right and partly not, or a product of our times. And modern secular people don't affirm a narrative the way religious people traditionally do. So if a Bible believer believes Adam and Eve, they believe it in a really strong way that's really important to them, right? But if I think that lead in the pipes helped cause the downfall of Rome, I don't feel that with any kind of strength, right? It's just like, well, that's a historical fact. And evolution is sort of the thing that secular people can affirm. It is the story that we all share. It's a story that encompasses everyone, not just humans, but all animals. And so you can affirm that story and not feel like you're parochial or narrow-minded or whatever, the way you would if you affirmed almost really any other origin story is some culture's origin story. And this is our true origin story for everybody. And that's why it could get picked up in China and Japan and wherever. And that's why secular people, they see the value of this, because this is the thing that we as secular people can get behind. It's like E.O. Wilson said, it's your origin story that sort of defines who you are and how you see yourselves. And so people love this book because it reaffirms that unity, and that something that we can all get behind. And it's not negative. There are a lot of secular feelings that are about like keeping religion out of the workplace, or keeping religion out of business, the government, or what have you. And but this is a positive thing that we can all get behind. Parents love teaching their kids that they're part of the animal family, and kids love learning it.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that's totally correct. There isn't. You're right. There isn't a dogmatic sort of story that we have to believe is definitely this way, no other way. Yeah. And that's what's so great about it, is that there are no new additions to the Bible coming out, but there are constantly new scientific papers coming out, informing and improving how we previously thought about these things.
Right. Yeah. In my lifetime, I have seen advances in how we understand evolution and how we understand our evolutionary history. So it's really exciting, and that's what's great about being part of the whole scientific story, right? Like if I had written a book about a boy with a kite or whatever, that would be my story, and that would be the end of it. But I wrote a book about all of us and our origins, and then everybody can come into that from whatever direction they want. And so kids can read this, and then whether they read something next about dinosaurs or they read something about birds, it's all part of that big, grand narrative.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So, is there anything else you want to point out?
So I do like being in contact with people who are out there. So I've got a Grandmother Fish Facebook page and Twitter. You can find us really easily. The latest new thing that we would love to see some results on is the Clades solo mobile game. It's just $2, and it's got science notes for kids, and easy to find on iTunes or wherever. But both Karen and I could use help getting the word out. Right now, most parents don't go looking for a book about evolution for their little kids. because they don't even imagine that anyone has written such a book.
Right.
And
right.
so whether it's letting teachers know or librarians or parents or whatever, we need people to get out there and
Oh, guess who's in the
let
chat?
everyone know that this book exists now. And now there is a way for even little kids to be introduced to the idea of common descent. Yeah.
You know who just popped into the chat? Actually, PZ did. So we've been talking about you, PZ. All good things.
Yeah. Hey, thanks very much, PZ, for your support back in 2014 when we were running the Kickstarter. I really appreciated it. You were one of the first people that really believed in the book, even when it was just sketches and all the beautiful art hadn't been done yet.
Yeah. So also for anyone who wants to buy his book, the Amazon, I don't know if I already said it, but the Amazon link is in the description. Link to his website's in the description. Different links for Clades. It's all in the description. Everything you could possibly want.
Yeah, if you go to the Grandmother Fish website, you can find everything from there. And if you want to buy your book at a friendly local bookstore and call up every bookstore in your city and ask if they have Grandmother Fish, Karen and I would appreciate that too.
Yeah. What we really need is a signed copy. We need
yes.
Well, we need an autographed copy. But that'll just complete the collection, you know.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll meet someday at a science convention or something like that.
Do people book you for stuff like that?
I've done a little bit of stuff in the area, like visiting classes and that sort of thing. I am totally available for like reading my book to a class over the internet or being a guest of honor at a convention or something like that. Yeah, I'd be happy to. I'm happy to get out there. I am full-time independent creative. I haven't been a corporate guy for 5 years now, and so my time's my own. I'm happy to meet up with people and present stuff, and yeah.
Okay. Well, I want to say thank you again for coming on.
Yeah, you bet, Jackson. Thanks for having me. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, I really enjoyed this. I enjoyed your book, and I'm sure I'll enjoy your game once I get that too. And so thanks for coming on. Thank you everyone in the live chat for being there and watching. And I will see all of you next time. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.